तो इंट्रोड्यूस करेगा.
हाँ.
ठीक है. Yeah, let's go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to IndieCast. Today's episode, we'll be tracking some recent updates, some recent developments, some core issues, policy matters. So today, on 10th and 11th Feb, there is an ongoing AI summit in Paris, which is being co-chaired by our Honorable Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji. So there's a summit that's going on. So I thought that it would be important to trace the history of AI policy in India, how we regulate it, how we have generated the frameworks for AI policy regulation in India, and that will be like sort of the first half of the episode. Then after that half, we will discuss the resignation of the Chief Minister of Manipur, N. Biren Singh, which happened about 24 hours ago. So that
Yes.
news is from yesterday, and so it's a fresh developing news which we will discuss, and we will also discuss the related policy implications of that. So I'm going to introduce the topic a little bit in the sense that I've been wanting to speak a little bit about AI policy and AI policy regulation in India. Last week, I think Sam Altman was in India.
Yeah.
He met Shri Ashwini Vaishnav, the Minister of Information Technology in India. And I mean, so there's been a lot of ongoing conversations around the development of complex generative AI tools, the development of things like large language models within India. So I think that it's important to have a conversation about regulatory frameworks and the guiding sort of principles in India's investment and regulatory arena, which could hypothetically create India's own large language model or
Yes.
generative AI
That's true.
platform. So, because I think Ashwini Vaishnav also said something to the extent of that India will soon have its own large language model, which would be of international standards. After I think the uh, rather surprising development that led to DeepSeek becoming a very famous and hot topic. So there's this whole ongoing conversation. Jay, let's get your take on that. Then I'll further discuss the policy implications
Yeah,
of
I
it.
feel whatever China does better than the West, it suddenly becomes like a matter of concern. And we always try to forget that our information with the West is also not that safe. It is also being manipulated constantly. The only advantage that we have in the whole process is that, at least on paper, the West is a bit more transparent than China. I mean, of course, China is not transparent at all, but it's not that the West does not have its deep state and its own agendas. So I feel this thing is gonna go on for a very long time. It's not something that we should be, extremely worried about, because I see it as positive competition. And in absolute credit to the Chinese, I would like to say that they're actually giving the West a run for their money. They are getting in results at, like, prices which are much lesser than the exorbitant money that the West has been pumping in. So from that point of view, I think this is a pushback that the Chinese are giving to the neo-colonial agenda of the West. And given the historic context, the century of humiliation in which the Chinese suffered a lot, and of course the colonialism that the Indians also faced, I feel China is doing a good job in, like, standing up to in general, European hegemony of the world order. So
Yeah.
that is my opinion. I think DeepSeek is a very good example of that. That is my optimistic view of it. Now, the pessimistic view of it is that, let's not forget, this government is responsible for a lot of human rights violations. There is absolutely no freedom of speech. And if you go on DeepSeek and if you ask the AI model as to what happened at the Tiananmen Square, it'll just say that it's not trained enough. Or if you talk about the Uyghur the Uyghur genocide, quote unquote, it would have absolutely no answers.
Even
Yeah.
the status of the McMahon line and Arunachal
Yeah.
Pradesh, if you ask DeepSeek those questions, I don't believe that it gives a standard answer to that.
Yes.
Anyway, I would like to pivot the discussion first to the US and China, brief on that. Then we'll talk a little bit about India's policy,
Mm-hmm.
which is like I feel like I want to center this conversation a bit more around India. But later on, later more on that. We'll start a little bit by talking about how China must be credited because creating a large language model is not an easy task. I was listening to a very long podcast at the Lex Friedman podcast, and one thing that stuck with me was that to have a successful large language model, you need to run a lot of failed test runs, and you need to keep doing that. And for that, you need a certain both software infrastructure and like physical infrastructure to be able to do that. You need like servers, you need GPUs, you need uh, even smaller things like a stable electricity supply and things like that, which don't seem like very fancy when you start talking about AI policy, but they're equally critical. So I think China must be credited for managing all these things at such a low price. And I think the DeepSeek R1, that model, gives a very similar performance to GPT-4o, which has gotten a lot of West centric technology experts very alarmed because up until now, the conversation and narrative in AI and wider tech policy was centered around the US. OpenAI is based in the US. Microsoft is based in the US. Nvidia is a US company, and all the policy prerogative policy priorities were being driven by a US centric approach, and DeepSeek has sort of emerged as a disruptor primarily because of the low cost yet highly optimized performance in that sense. So that's a reason for alarm for the sort of lobby around the world that is very wary of China. But many people from various ideologies are celebrating it because it's a sort of democratization of the AI space. Because after all, that does set the ball rolling for generative AI tools and large language models to be developed around the world. Even India can generate hope from that. Now, speaking about India, I just spoke about how you have a certain set of server requirements, physical infrastructure requirements, the ability to run a lot of failed test runs. These things will allow you to have a successful LLM or a generative AI model. To his credit, Ashwini Vaishnav has addressed this issue that India must have its own model of this sort. But before you start doing that, we must ensure that we start working on these infrastructural requirements. Because, the government, if it just randomly wakes up one day and says, okay, India will now have its own LLM model, you need to first start thinking that a country with a decent amount of technically sound people should have already had it if the investment and infrastructural environment and the regulatory landscape was favorable enough. If it was favorable enough, India would have already had its LLM models. So the thing is that government can't just one day come and start picking winners and say that okay, now we will have an LLM model. You have to first working on the back end and ensuring that we work on the requirements which are
Yeah.
technically required to
But
create a Gen AI
but
or a
how will that
LLM model.
happen? Absolute. How will that happen? Like, before you can even start creating something like that, there'll be so many different political stakeholders. They say, oh, this particular community does not have enough representation. There is not enough representation from this particular group. They are not being represented at all. No, 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 no. This AI tool is not gonna work. So, like, how is it gonna work for our country, bro? Like, no, it's not gonna work.
I agree with you.
ऐसा
I
नहीं
think
हो ही नहीं सकता भाई.
no,
ग्रुप बी को अगर रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं मिलेगी तो वो एआई मॉडल नहीं बन सकता है. नहीं.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And dude, to think of it, to credit to Government of India, Niti Aayog,
Yeah.
India's like primary state-run think
Yeah.
tank, they started releasing their first seminal reports on AI all the way back in 2018. There was proposals to set up like centers for AI excellence, centers for transformational AI development, and there were centers for adoption of responsible AI all the way back in 2021. So it's not like we haven't been having those conversations, but the point is that at some level you need to move with respect to AI policy and tech policy. You need in India, you need to start moving from the conceptualization phase to the execution phase. The problem with India is we don't have enough private sector research and development. If you have startups and tech companies doing their own private sector research, which is not government backed and government is not picking winners that okay, we'll create this LLM model, what will happen is profit seeking people will be incentivized to conduct their own research and create their own generative AI models in India. if our regulatory landscape was favorable, it would have already
Yes, yes.
happened.
I mean, if
So now the
the
time to create it is starting.
yeah, yeah. The private sector is so busy in just, managing the various regulatory compliances, which are so complex, which are so complicated. How would they actually get the time to actually do anything which is innovative? I mean, granted that there have been certain, advancements that have been made, but just imagine the amount of regulatory compliances that are being thrown on them year after year, making the issues even more complicated. I think the only two things that work the two professions that are perfect for an Indian right now is probably the civil services, of course, if you're in the government, if you're in the executive, or if you're a lawyer. Because like these are the only two professions which the regulatory policies of all the Indian governments have favored
Yeah,
historically.
yeah, and it's a highly regulatory
Exactly.
regulatory centric
Yeah,
country,
कॉम्प्लेक्स
right?
कर दो भाई, ये डॉक्यूमेंट डाल दो, वो डॉक्यूमेंट डाल दो,
I
फिर
mean,
कोई कुछ कर ही नहीं पाओगे भाई.
India is a country that loves its red tape,
Yes.
like Jay saying.
या अच्छा, आपको एआई का बिजनेस सेटअप करना है, ठीक है. आपको उससे पहले ये 1500 रेगुलेशंस के थ्रू जाना पड़ेगा, और फिर उस 1500 में रेगुलेशंस में से सेक्शन 1498 का सब सेक्शन सी का सब सेक्शन जेड पढ़ना पड़ेगा. वो जब तक आप क्लियर नहीं कर पाओगे, तब तक आप ना अपना एआई बिजनेस आप
और
नहीं सेटअप
ये
कर सकते, नहीं सेटअप कर सकते आप.
और इसकी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी हमारे और बिजनेसेस को भी इम्पैक्ट कर रही है. इंडिया नाउ वांट्स टू मूव ऑन डिफेंस इंडिजिनाइजेशन, फॉर एग्जांपल. अभी चाइना की बात हुई, डीप सी की बात हुई. लास्ट वीक आई वाज वाचिंग अ डॉक्यूमेंट्री बिकॉज आई थिंक एट द एंड ऑफ द मंथ ऑफ डिसम्बर, China also showed the world many of its images of a 6th-gen fighter aircraft. We have not even been able to indigenize the markets for maybe indigenously made assault rifles or vehicles for a lesser complicated military hardware than compared to a 6th-gen fighter aircraft. तो अभी तो हम उस स्टेज पे पहुंचे भी नहीं है कि हम लोग 6th-gen fighter aircraft बनाने की कोशिश कर सके. Because again, even in defense infrastructure, private sector companies are absent, और एयरफोर्स के अफसरों को खुद ही हाल पे ज्यादा ट्रस्ट नहीं होता.
फिर आपको
कैंडिडली एडमिट करते हैं कि यार हम लोग चाहते तो हैं कि हमारी फ्लीट मॉडर्नाइज हो, एक्सपैंड करे, बट वी डोंट रियली थिंक दैट HAL कैन डू दैट. That is the opinion of
everyone.
many Air Force
Bhai,
officers.
to corroborate what you're saying, everyone that I've spoken to in the BSF or in the army, I have spoken to them or asked them this one simple question: whether they prefer the INSAS or the AK-47. INSAS was our first indigenously made assault rifle, और सबका एक आंसर था AK-47. सबको AK-47 पसंद आई थी, and that is an assault rifle which was designed in the 1940s. ये हालत है भाई हमारे देश की.
चलो, इंडिया के डिसएडवांटेजेस की तो बहुत बात करी. वी हैव सम एडवांटेजेस आल्सो.
Of course.
We can develop so many large language models because there are so many languages in India. We can train India centric LLMs because after all, large language models will be trained on existing data, and we can slash our regulatory concerns, and if we can use the giants of Indian industry like Reliance, Tata, and back even the newer AI startups which are already working on localized AI solutions, I think you can have a lot of good AI tools. I think more important is AI adaptation. We should not have a focus that we need to create something that can parallel or compete with DeepSeek or OpenAI. That is now a goal that I don't know what it will achieve. Our goal should be that we can do AI adaptation. कि ट्रैफिक पुलिस वाला खड़ा है, उसके पास चलान से लेके ट्रैफिक मैनेजमेंट के लिए एआई टूल्स हैं, विच द बैंगलोर पुलिस इज ऑलरेडी डूइंग, बाय द वे, और ग्रेट क्रेडिट टू देम, मोर ऑन दैट लेटर.
शॉट आउट टू बैंगलोर, शॉट आउट टू कर्नाटका.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
अच्छा काम कर रहे हो आप लोग.
So, and we should have AI adaptation in other areas. You can use AI for, archiving government data. You can use AI for management of public transportation systems, data protection. You can tweak the data protection, digital data protection bill, the DPDP as you call it, to make it more friendly for AI tools, and you can also address privacy concerns along the same line. So, you need a regulatory landscape which does enough for regulation that, okay, personal data is not being stolen, and, things like things that concern us, things like revenge porn, things like deep fakes, those things are managed by AI tools, but the government is not crowding out good industrial attempts to do AI adaptation. So, there's a very delicate balance here. you do AI adaptation. You don't try to replace existing LLM or generative AI models also. Because the next AI models which will surprise us will be things bordering on artificial general intelligence. और artificial general intelligence अगर इंडिया को किसी टूल के थ्रू डेवलप करनी होगी, we will need to have capacity which will have to exceed what China and US have already done. तो आप अगर AGI के सपने देखना चाहते हो तो आपको ऑलरेडी वैसे मॉडल्स को ट्रेन करना पड़ेगा जो शायद डीप सीक और ओपन एआई की कैपेसिटी को एक्सीड करे.
भाई
एंड वी नीड टू हैव अ कॉन्वर्सेशन विद आवरसेल्व्स, हैंड ऑन आवर हार्ट, कि क्या इंडिया में वो कैपेसिटी एग्जिस्टिंग है.
भाई
आई डोंट नो.
एआई अगर जनरल इंटेलिजेंस की तरफ गया इंडिया में, मेरे को तो सबसे ज़्यादा फनी लगेगा अगर वो इंडिया के सारे पॉलिटिकल इश्यूज भी अपने अंदर लेना शुरू कर दे और एजीआई भी बट जाए इंडिया के डिफरेंट सोसाइटीज में, कास्ट्स में, रिलीजन्स में. ब्रो बहुत फनी होगा. इमेजिन ब्रो,
इंडिया की एग्जिस्टिंग डेटा पे ट्रेन करेगी और इंडिया की डेटा में मतलब वो कास्टिज्म इनहेरिट करेगा, थोड़ी सी मतलब पॉलिटिकल वायलेंस की चीजें इनहेरिट करेगा, एंड दैट रेजेस मोर रीजंस एज टू व्हाई यू नीड अ फ्रेमवर्क टू रेगुलेट.
Wait, imagine like artificial general. I mean, of course, this is a hypothetical situation, and imagine AGI becomes so advanced that it starts replicating itself, like as like different individuals, and it suddenly becomes an important vote bank. Imagine, bro, like these political parties will go bonkers. Like, आपके क्या कहते हैं कोड को इम्प्रूव करवाने की हम पूरी कोशिश करेंगे, आपके कोड को ढंग से नहीं लिखा इन लोगों ने. और फिर कुछ लोग बोलेंगे आपका कोड तो खुद ही सीख सकता है, आपको कोड चेंज करवाने की क्या जरूरत है. आप
तू बात फनी कह रहा है, बट अगर एआई और टेक्नोलॉजी पॉलिसी पे वोटिंग होने लग गई तो देश के लिए काफी अच्छा होगा, honestly. Because then you would be voting on things outside the standard. Like हमारे जैसे इंटेलेक्चुअल्स कंप्लेन करते हैं कि सारी वोटिंग तो जात और रिलीजन पे होती है, बट इफ यू स्टार्ट वोटिंग ऑन एआई अडेप्टेशन, आई थिंक वो तो देश के लिए बेटर ही होगा. इट्स प्रोग्रेस, राइट?
of course.
But I think coming back, India's concerns are like related to data localization, right? We need to have technology that stores and sort of protects its data within India's borders. And another concern that I have with that is that if you want a large language model with standards which are internationally sound, but data which is locally stored, and I'm not very technically sound, but how do you implement that? We are, of course, using American made AI tools. I myself, like 80% of India's corporate sector today, use a lot of chat GPT. It's definitely making notes and making statistical analyses of all our data. We are not really able to protect it, right? And if the number of DeepSeek users increase, it will also store and quote unquote steal our data. And there's not a lot more you can do if these AI tools are working effectively. My understanding is that people will continue to use them despite data storage. Look at it like this, right? Amazon has access to so much of our data, and they do targeted advertising from it. They have access to so much buyer and consumer information, and because of the efficiency and their logistical effectiveness, people continue to use it. I was reading a study that after some point, Amazon started noting the sales of very low cost profitable items, and they basically replicated those in Amazon Basics. So if you look at it, it's not the most ethical business practice, because only Amazon had that data, and they used it to sort of bring out competition in some areas where they saw the profitability was high. So there's not just AI in tech regulation. You need a wider tech policy framework to address price discrimination, to address ethics of being on the digital space, to address privacy in times where we all want to use large language models, but we also want our data to be stored locally, to not be misused. We don't want any deep fakes. Now people can make voices look so realistic. You can have any celebrities say whatever you want through
You can get
deepfakes.
Narendra Modi to sing Lambi Jadai, the song from Awarapan, right?
Yeah.
It's from Awarapan, right?
So you need a wider tech policy strategy to deal with all kind of synthetic media, and where it intersects with things like data access, correction, grievance redressals, and that will take a sort of innovative approach. You can't outrightly ban its usage somewhere or restrict its usage somewhere. I think recently Ministry of Finance has said to all the
It's from
officers,
Jannat. It's from
yeah,
Jannat. My bad.
recently Ministry
Yeah.
of Finance said, यार तेरे को ये priority सूझ रही है. Recently Ministry of Finance said that to its officials and employees and officers that you are not to use any AI tool in office because they have some data privacy concerns. So I think that's an approach that you can't just restrict anybody from using AI tools anymore. We need a wider strategy. Credit to Government of India that now we are acknowledging these issues, and I hope that India makes many generative AI models. Many of our problems can be adapted to be dealt with AI, because AI, after all, is a useful tool. Let's not be fearful of it and have that doomsday view. Let's
Don't be a Luddite.
Yeah, exactly. Let's have a strategy, let's have a policy framework, and realistically start adapting AI.
Sahi hai.
And I think we can end the tech policy discussion
Yeah.
here today.
And
And
we
yeah,
can go to the second part of the episode.
let's speak about Manipur, Jai. Tell us more.
Manipur is again a topic and a state that we've been covering since the beginning of this podcast. So I think this is the fifth time we would be covering it, like in a dedicated episode. So yesterday, N. Biren Singh resigned from the chief minister's post. जो कि मेरे को लगता था उन्हें पिछले I think he should have done it on the day of the on the day when the violence started itself. But he's almost 2 years late. एंड उसका मेरे को कुछ ऐसे फ़ायदा नज़र नहीं आ रहा है. आई थिंक इट्स टू लिटिल टू लेट बिकॉज वट हैज़ हैपेंड इज दैट द कम्युनिटीज़ हैव बिकम टू पोलराइज्ड. द गन्स आर पॉइंटेड एट ईच अदर एंड द trenches have been dug up, and it has reached to such a point that now there are so many videos that are emerging from Manipur where you can literally see militias carrying weapons as if there is as if the state is non-existent. And there's a video which went viral where you can see people from the hills brandishing their assault rifles while playing football. And of course there have been videos of Meiteis also carrying assault rifles and parading in different areas, civilians and not the security forces. So on both the sides it's become really really bad. And the biggest problem that we face right now from the angle of Manipur is that although rational voices, all the voices which actually wanted to promote peace, were viciously subjugated, were put down violently, that nobody had an alternative but to pick up the weapon and fight against each other. And this is the point which was made by Bimal Akoijam recently, the member of parliament. And it's a very very dire situation. Credit where it's due, the violence has substantially reduced from what it was. I think the last major confrontation happened was a few months ago when we covered the aspect of 22 people being killed when a Hummer teacher, who was a woman, was raped and burnt and killed, allegedly by Meiteis. And in retaliation, the militants came down and abducted a bunch of Meitei civilians and killed them eventually. And in the retaliatory gunfire, CRPF, a CRPF Jawan ended up killing 10 Kuki Hummer militants. And it is said that he used an LMG on a Tata vehicle or a Mahindra vehicle, if I'm not wrong, which was mounted. So again, technological upgradation with respect to India's military tech, military tech. Because before that, the LMGs that we used to mount on our vehicles, they were outdated Bren LMGs, which were from the Second World War. Brens were made during the Second World War, right? If I'm not wrong, or before that.
So I think
First World War. So those outdated LMGs which are still in use, those were being mounted in a very very haphazard manner on vehicles, and which did not give much mobility to the Jawan. But now using better technology, better LMGs, modernized LMGs. So it is said that that really helped, and that saved the day. So with respect to security, that was a win, but with respect to reconciliation, that was a major loss. And what it gives a message is that the things are very very delicate. And it's like I could probably compare it to how the troubles were in Northern Ireland, where the two communities are totally segregated. There's a Protestant corner and there is a Catholic corner. So here there's a Meitei corner and a Kuki corner, no interaction. And unfortunately, even though a lot of people talk about the the integrity of the Manipur state, I feel now they will have to go with the Assam model where they would have to guarantee cookies, their tribal councils, which they already have,
Yeah.
but I think it has to be a little more autonomous, like something which the Bodos have, or the Kacharis have in Assam, something more similar to that, more autonomy. Otherwise, I don't see a way out
Yeah.
from the situation.
I think unfortunately for N. Biren Singh, a lot of his tenure and his legacy will be remembered with the onset of the violence from 2023 onwards. I think official figures are like pointing to somewhere around 300 or so deaths, yeah,
Yeah.
and so much more violence, like 250 deaths, displacement of at least like 60-70,000 people, and it was about mounting political pressure that had asked him to resign about at least a year and a half back. So it took a while. It honestly, in my view, is a day late and a dollar short. uh, and I think, is it effective enough? Is it going to lead to the right conversations? My sincere, earnest hope is that it can lead to some reconciliation between Meitei and Kuki communities within Manipur, who have been at loggerheads since May 2023, from what I understand, and the tensions have been brewing for a lot longer than that. So let's open the discussion for reconciliatory processes to start in Manipur. With the resignation of N. Biren Singh, the first thing that will have to happen is that you will need to fill a leadership gap and a leadership void. I hope that governors or president's rule doesn't continue there, or I mean, a new chief minister who is agreeable to both communities is appointed soon enough, and it will have more policy implications. You will need political strategies to manage peace between the two communities. It was like till a few months back, you had CRPF men separating Meiteis and Kuki communities, similar to what the BSF does on the international border. So you have two communities within India being separated, with a by a central armed police force separating them from going to violence with each other. That is some kind of instability that no peaceful state should have within India. So let's fill the gaps that have been exposed in the security of the state apparatus in Manipur. And I think that's the first conversation that we can have. Then follow it up with conversation related to narco smuggling, to weapon smuggling, to drug addictions in the state, and then develop human rights and legal frameworks to finally make Manipur sort of be on the developmental and a peaceful trajectory. So that those are like my 2 cents on the resignation of N. Biren Singh and where it will go from here.
Yeah.
Back to you, Jay.
Absolutely. I just feel that there are a lot of other things also that need to be tackled. I feel what's important is that uh, there should be more administrative foresight in these issues. I feel with respect to the cookie areas, there should be some levels of separation as what they demand. I feel there is no other way out of this. There has to be some types of understanding where the two communities come together on a table and say ki fine, we'll drop our weapons, and both of these communities now, they should start giving each other concessions. They should say ki okay fine, we are willing to say give you separate administration, but Metis should also have the right to buy property in hill areas. You get it? Like, something like this. And once you get separate administration, then things can go back to, pre 2023, pre 2023 piece. We can also say that another concession that can be, worked around is can you think about other concessions, because this is something that I'm thinking from the point of view of a
No,
negotiator.
I think that the
Hmm.
overview can
Yeah.
be, and I'm not, by
Hmm.
no means
Yeah.
am I claiming to be an expert, but I think you can hand a lot of the administrative power on the ground to village councils, and the the district collectors and superintendents of police can make sure that they act as a bridge of peace
Yeah.
between the sort of Meitei dominated villages and the Kuki dominated villages. And the you know, they have a security advisor to Manipur. I don't know if he's still the ex DG CRPF. The Ajay Bhalla himself, the governor, was Union Home Secretary for a long time. They have more than high literacy on these issues. They are well informed people. So I think they need to come together, the bureaucracy of the state and the, you know, sort of executive. They need to sort of ensure that they play the role of bridging the gap between the MLAs or the community leaders
And
from the Kuki
yeah.
communities and the Meitei communities. Make sure that you keep sustaining the efforts of like peace conferences,
Yeah.
no matter how
I
difficult they
think
prove to be.
Meiteis, even though they want to be associated with the scheduled tribe community, I think they can because it's a very small community with respect to India's massive population. I feel other than granting them scheduled tribe recognition, I think they should be categorized as a special group altogether. I feel because it's such a specific area, such a specific community, and it is so isolated. I think that from that angle, Meiteis also deserve a separate type of recognition from the government, which is which is quite which is quite which is just focused on the Meiteis. So I feel there could be, say cookies get separate administration, but Meiteis get this recognition from the central government, which gives them cultural rights, which gives them more linguistic rights, which gives them more. Of course, they have those cultural rights. They have those linguistic rights, but it gives them more of a special status.
Yeah, this reminds me of
Yeah.
the Lebanese sort of status,
Yes,
right?
there is
That
no
the,
other way
The
out.
speaker can be from maybe the Christian community, somebody can be from Shia Muslims. So, you know, that in a similar way, you can have like, I don't know how you can have the state assembly legislate those kind of
I mean, these are our
reservations.
opinions. We are absolute amateurs, and we haven't seen anything on the ground. This is just like our 2 cents that we are giving.
Yeah, I mean, you have to innovate,
Yeah,
right?
you have to innovate.
If there is a radical solution that is required, you lead some amount of innovations on the ground. I think that one way that Indian public policy practitioners lack, in my assessment, is that they are very scared of some sort of regional autonomy. I think that granting the village councils and tribal councils in many areas in the northeast, granting them some basic autonomous functions could,
They
I
already
feel
have
like,
it, right? They already have it.
I mean, but you know, it's subject to
It's subject to hill district to hill
debates,
district,
right?
and there's
it's like
yeah,
how effective is their
yeah, yeah, yeah.
autonomy on policy practice?
Exactly.
So those are questions to much more
Like some hill
academic
district, some
research.
councils have more autonomy as compared to other councils. So that's why I gave the example of Bodo district councils, Bodo autonomous district councils, because I think that was able to satisfy a lot of the demands that were being put forward by the Bodo militants.
And you know, it's like it doesn't even have to be that radical.
Yeah.
Have functioning Zilla Parishads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can have like a chairman Zilla Parishad, some IS officer come in and back him up with good financing, good security, and allow that person to facilitate an environment for local leadership to be revived in
Yeah.
Manipur that A, sustains surrendering of arms and weapons, B, that focuses on bridging the gap between the Meitei and Kuki communities, so at least there is some dialogue. It is maybe a simple sounding solution from a less educated man on the ground, but it's a suggestion. You don't have to accept it. Feel free to debate it. I'm just loud thinking. So that is my take on this. I don't have anything more to add.
Yeah, same. Because we've already talked about the reasons for violence. We've given you context of the culture. We've given you the origins of a lot of other things. So today our discussion on Manipur was solution centric. So that's why we were stammering a little bit, and we were thinking of solutions while we were recording this episode. And yeah, that thing we can.
I think we can conclude our
the
conversation.
conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And
This is the disclaimer that's coming at the end of the episode, but we thought it was important to have a conversation about A, tech policy in India, and B, the recent updates with respect to the security situation in Manipur. by no means are we claiming to be experts on these two issues, but we are just like sort of independent policy analysts racking our brain
Yeah.
on how we can
And
have innovative
and
solutions on these issues.
as responsible citizens, so as reasonable citizens of this country, we have the right to talk about the things which are affecting our country, both in a positive way and in a negative way, so that our coming generations don't repeat these mistakes and are well prepared for, say, upheavals
Yeah, well said.
or other issues.
And I mean, yeah, well said. And maybe these conversations reach some policy action. We have spoken a bit about Manipur, and sometimes our episodes have actually reached Manipur too. We
So
have
many.
we have small followers, but we
Yeah.
have some followers in Manipur, and we are
Yeah.
very proud of that.
Yeah.
So maybe we can spark some important conversations, even in like two households, and that's a win enough for us.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll end.
Thank
with
you,
that.
man. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.